Laura and I are here together to discuss challenging conversations, and the most important thing that we're wanting to say here and why we think it's so important is that we've noticed that when leaders think about having challenging conversations, they often think of how they can persuade the other person or win an argument. And a simple shift from me against them to a frame of coaching can make leadership a lot easier. So I'm really excited that we're both here today to talk to you about this. I'm even more excited that Laura is part of our team. She is a specialist in doing conflict transformation, and she has a big background, a lot of experience in mediation. So I'm really glad that we're here. A quick introduction about who we are and who we're representing. We are two of the co-founders of Well Leaders. You might be asking, what is Well Leaders? We offer leadership coaching, training, and support that equips leaders to inspire their teams, lead with authenticity, and be healthy. So we help leaders be well leaders. Laura, thank you for joining me today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, Lauren. It's great to be here. One of my favorite topics.
Yeah, maybe you can share a little bit about why we're doing this topic.
Well, I think, Lauren, that we've been meeting for some time now in a kind of supporting one another in our individual coaching businesses capacity. And I think we've noticed that one of the things that comes up for all four of us within the Well Leaders team is this theme around clients wanting to have support in having challenging conversations. And I think that's why we've kind of landed on this topic, because it's so relevant to what's going on at the moment in the world, not just professionally, but also for many of us in our personal lives as well, with challenging topics coming up quite frequently for conversation.
Yeah, we're living in such an uncertain world that having these tools feel like it's really important to navigate the challenges with resilience. And you brought up the conversation that we've all been having with a lot of our clients about conflict. And I wonder, what are the mistakes that you see leaders making in those conversations?
Well, before I answer that, I think I just want to say that most of the leaders that I work with, and I think this probably goes for most leaders as well, are like, their intentions are genuinely well-intentioned, I suppose. They've got good intentions, but often they start with the strategy. What do I need to say? What do I need to do? And go in really quickly into kind of that problem-solving mode of how can we resolve this? So that would probably be one that I see quite a lot. And one of the things that, and you know this, Lauren, from your coaching, one of the things that we do in coaching is just helping them to slow down and to really take the time to reflect on what's going on and to prepare themselves. So I think that's one thing. I think maybe the other probably key thing, and this is a big trap for those of us who have sort of managed other people, is thinking that we have to know the answers, thinking that we need to know how to sort things out, what to do, rather than actually just getting curious and being open to what might arise in the situation. I think so those are probably the key ones that have come up.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you mentioned there about people just jumping straight into solutions, I see leaders doing that all the time. And it's such a challenge, because I think that's a huge roadblock to connection. And it reminds me of a person that I used to work with. He was head of a department, and he would have conversations with the CEO, and he had a few of these conversations that were really challenging for him. He often had to go into meetings with the CEO of the facility, and they had entirely different ideas about what the best use of resources were for the facility. And this was probably about the third meeting that he was having with them. And I distinctly recall his intention to give all the reasons to the CEO why he found his plan better. And I think this is the way that people often go about persuading someone or trying to get their way, is to go straight to the strategy, list all the reasons, and actually it doesn't work, and it didn't work. I remember him coming out of the meeting feeling really frustrated. They didn't come to an agreement. He wasn't finding a solution that they were both happy with, and and he felt, I think, one of the biggest things that he felt was this frustration and annoyance that he wasn't able to get his way, or he wasn't able to persuade the person in front of him. And I think this is so counterintuitive. Often people think that giving your reasons for change will help them, but it doesn't actually help people see the light. And yeah, I wonder what thoughts that you have coming up as I say that all of those things.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic example, and something that I think will probably be familiar to a lot of people. It comes from this perspective of, well, I need to know what to do, and I need to go in there and persuade other people that this is the right course of action. And actually, that often, and you said it at the start, it can block that kind of space for openness and for new things to emerge and arise. And I think that's probably the first thing that I would say is to encourage anyone who's leading other people to go into a challenging situation with some openness as to what's actually going on there, rather than assuming that they know and assuming that their kind of agenda is the quote unquote the right one. And I want to just give you an example of this by sharing with you a story of a coaching client of mine, who has a responsibility to manage a team. And this client knew that he needed to have a challenging conversation with one of the members of his team, because this person was very good at their job, was liked by the team, so there were no issues there. The only issue was that they were consistently turning up late, and the turning up late was having a knock-on impact on the service that they were trying to deliver, and also on the rest of the team. And so, you know, as the manager of this team, my client knew that he needed to have this difficult conversation. And so we worked on this in a coaching session together, and, you know, he was very committed to doing this in a way that respected his colleague. And what he ended up doing was suggesting that they go for a walk. And so they went for a walk together, and he started off by just connecting with the colleague, just asking how he was finding the work, what was going on for him. And he also offered some positive affirmation of some of the things that he appreciated about his work and about what he was offering and bringing to the team. And then he raised the issue of the lateness and said, there is just something I need to talk to you about, and it's in relation to this. And he shared very much the impact that it was having on him, on the team, and on the kind of delivery of the service that they were offering. And I think it was, I got feedback from him at the next coaching session that we had. And I think, you know, it was a surprise to this colleague that this came up. But what opened up from that way of dealing with it was really the start of a conversation that they then had around how to help this person show up on time. And that was really the only issue that they were trying to kind of focus on. And it worked. Within a couple of weeks, this person was not 100% of the time, but most of the time showing up on time, you know, consistently there when he needed to be there for the team and for the service that they were delivering. And I think, you know, what I'd want to bring out from that is just that he started off by preparing himself, that this is my client. You know, he knew that this conversation needed to happen. I think previously there'd been some texts going to and fro between him and his colleague, but it hadn't really had an impact in terms of behaviour. But he didn't go in there with like, this is what needs to happen. He went in there open to hear what was going on for this person, and what actually emerged was a whole load of stuff that was going on that my client, the manager, had not known about previously. So, you know, if he'd gone in there assuming that he knew exactly what was going on, he would never have had that understanding and that connection that came about. So I think, you know, that being willing to slow down and prepare and take the time to prepare, and being willing to sort of shift the context. So rather than keeping on having the communication via email or via text, just really shifting that context helped a lot.
Yeah, I love that story. I think there's so much richness to it, and lots of helpful tips that can come out of that for leaders that are listening. The one thing that I heard you say is really taking the time to prepare yourself for the conversation. It's not something that you can just have write a quick email or just go about it without thinking about what's coming up for you and what's important for you in it. And the other thing that I'm hearing you say is remove yourself from the context. And especially in that story of going out for a walk, I think being able to walk with someone is so different to sitting opposite them at a desk and having quite a combative stance when you're having a difficult conversation. Where being out in nature and walking alongside each other, I think that's really helpful in facilitating a discussion that's a lot more connecting. And the other thing that I think you brought up was really finding out, being curious about the other person, finding out what's happening for that person so that you have an understanding, you're meeting that person with empathy, and then broaching the subject of the challenge of having that he was obviously showing up late and was impacting the business. But that only happened later. First, it was really getting a clear understanding of what's going on for the person.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things, just if I can come back on that, it's so tempting when there's a situation like this that is, this is a fairly straightforward example, and I've chosen this because it illustrates some of those points. But I think in a straightforward situation like this, it's really tempting to just fire off an email, say, we need you to be showing up on time, because that's the bottom line of where the kind of difficulty or the challenge came in. Actually, and that would be, it feels quicker and it feels more efficient to do it that way. But one of the phrases we have in mediation work and conflict resolution work is you need to go slow to go quick. You need to slow everything right down and just focus on the relationships. And that can feel quite hard, I think, for people who are, have got a very heavy workload, who are managing others, who've got a lot going on, they've got a lot on their plates, to spend time on what can feel really quite straightforward issue. But I think I would want to encourage people to realise that there's layers of these things. This is the presenting issue, but there's stuff going on beneath that you can't necessarily see. And by investing the time to prepare and also to have the conversation directly, whether that's in person as it was in this context or remotely like we're talking now, it's so key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. You have to go slow. It reminds me of patience, of just really slowing down so that you have the time to connect with your team members, and that can really help to create that solid foundation for your whole team.
Yeah.
So, Laura, to summarize it all, what would you say are the top 3 to 5 tips that you'd like to give our leaders listening?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the first one would be to do your own work, to do your own preparation work. And I know that's a sort of quite a vague comment, but there's lots of different components to that. And it's, it's one of the things that we're going to be working on in a lot of depth in the Challenger Conversations course that's coming up in the next couple of months. That if people want support around that aspect of it, it can be really helpful to have that support of a community and that input. But I suppose a kind of simple takeaway would be just to notice what state of mind you're coming to this from, what state of heart you're coming to this conversation from as a starting point. I think changing the context. So if you've previously had all the kind of conversations, if you like, over email or over text, then making sure that you are doing it in person or at least over kind of remote video conferencing. If you usually have it in the office, maybe go out to a cafe or a hotel. If you're completely remote in your work and you usually do it over Teams or Zoom, then maybe try a phone call and suggest that you each go for a walk and have the conversation whilst you're both outside. It doesn't really matter, but the changing the context can be really, really helpful. It can shift the whole dynamic and energy of the conversation. And when, you know, in mediation, it's one of the important things that we always do is bring people together in an impartial space that's different to where they usually work. What else? What have I covered? So yeah, preparing themselves, shifting the context. I think going in, and this came up just now, going in with that intention just to connect as a human being and find out what's going on for them. Not assuming that you know, not kind of diving straight into business, but actually just asking what's going on for them and listening as part of that. So holding some space and some airtime for listening.
The other thing that I'd like to add in here is, and I thought you beautifully demonstrated in your story, of starting with the positives. And we know through research that starting with affirmation can help someone to move along the change line, so towards the behavior that you'd like to see, or that will be beneficial for the company or the team that you're working for. When you're starting with affirmations, people are more likely and more open to receive feedback. And I think that's one of the key hidden trick that I think a lot of people overlook.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, definitely starting with that. And the other thing I think, which was sort of the end of the story, is talking about the impact of the behaviour. So, you know, kind of owning that for oneself. This is the impact on me, and this is the impact on this situation or on others. So that, but without it kind of, without doing that in a blaming sense. So, you know, you're doing this and you need to stop, but rather this is the sort of almost like telling the story of this is what's going on and how it's affecting. And then you're absolutely right. Someone's much more likely to be able to hear that when they've just received a lot of affirmation about, you know, the other aspects of their work and some of their strengths. So.
I think we've shared some really fantastic tips that people can go away and think about when they're about to have a challenging conversation. And I do encourage leaders who are listening or who have had a lot of challenges with conversations to know that these are difficult subjects. These are difficult processes that you're needing to follow, and a lot of people find it challenging. We really encourage you to try those tips, change the context of where you're having those conversations, prepare yourself for it, start with affirmations and really listen actively. And know that there will be a time for you to share your opinion about what you think is best. But starting with these connecting aspects can be really foundational and grounding for you to move forward together in a partnership rather than one against the other. And if you'd like to hear more about the work that we're doing around challenging conversations, we'll put the link to our Challenging Conversations leadership program that's going to launch this year. But yeah, we're really looking forward to partnering and supporting leaders to go forward with these challenging conversations.